Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, and we're actually starting Volume 2 of Remnants of Filth. I can't believe we're already at Volume 2. Like, I remember when I was just like, I'm gonna start doing reading streams, whatever, and I didn't know what was gonna happen or if, like, anybody was gonna follow them at all, so I'm really excited that we're already here at Volume 2. Hello. Hello, everybody. Um, Also, I'm trying to use, like, a book stand today, because I was talking to, War Dove and Blue. Yeah, I was talking to y'all about book stands and book rings and different things, and I have one, so I'm trying to use it this time. So we're gonna see how that goes, because it's kind of awkward with bigger books, but or like, fatter books, I guess, but I'm trying it. Um Also, I had like a thought last time. We ended on sort of the weird cliffhanger of like suddenly being introduced to a new character, and it was Murong Chuyi, and it said that he was the ignorance of Changhua. And and that goes all the way back to like the there's something about the three like Buddhist, not sins. Hold on, I had it pulled up. It's like three Buddhist poisons. There were three infamous villains in Changhua who exemplified the Buddhist poisons of greed, wrath, and ignorance. And so it said Murong Chuyi is the ignorance of Changhua. I'm like, I can't even think of the Buddhist poison of ignorance. I don't even know what that would be like. So I'm really excited to find out what the deal is with that. Also, hello everybody. We have a new person. Lolly. Hi. And hi, Rena. Um, Hello, Nina. Oh yeah, I need to show y'all the cover. I have looked at it a lot. I think it's kind of my favorite cover of like a Danmei that I've seen so far. But we're just going to appreciate it. I just think the colors are really beautiful together. And it's sort of surprisingly like light and pastel. And then I really like that reddish orange with the blue. I don't know, it just looks so good. And the back, I'm gonna open up the little insert. You can see like the full like front and back cover together. This is so far, yeah, this is like my favorite Danmei cover. Obsessed. Yes, Henry. Hello, Henry. Teal and pinkish reddish orange combo strikes again. It just looks good. You got really lucky with the art in general. Yes. Yes, they did. Okay. Oh my gosh. And there's another little bit of art in the front, and I haven't looked at it yet because I'm not sure if it's a spoiler or not, but I'm excited to look at it at some point in the volume, either by the end or if anybody tells me if it's like a spoiler of a certain point or not, because I don't know. Alright, so starting volume 2, we're on chapter 35, which is called Fourth Uncle. Oh, thank you, Blue. Okay, you'll tell me when I can look at it. Not yet. Okay, good to know. Okay. Fourth Uncle. Indifference to good and evil, disinterest in right and wrong, such were the roots of ignorance. Murong Chuyi was infamous for his pursuit of artificing to the exclusion of all else. It was said that he cared nothing for friends or family and dedicated all his time to his chosen vocation. In his effort to create supernaturally powerful weaponry, he was willing to try anything and sacrifice everything. This man gave the impression of complete detachment from the earthly world. Whether it was his disposition, looks, or flowing attire, all of it exuded an unmistakable aloofness. Almost no one in the entire imperial capital liked the idea of speaking to him, though he wouldn't waste breath on them either, of course. The only person who unflaggingly clung to him was Fourth Uncle. Delighted, Yue Chunqing scrambled forward and attempted to hug him. So he's the fourth uncle. Impassively, the ignorant immortal Murong Chuyi stepped back to dodge the little nephew charging toward him. With one sweep of his horsetail whisk, swirling gusts of wind surrounded Li Qingqian, handily trapping the vicious sword spirit within a haze of white smoke. Fourth uncle, you're finally here. So you were in the capital. Hooray! Mo Shi and Murong Lian couldn't help but pity Yue Chunqing. He bounced around like a puppy bursting with excitement, joy, and attachment to this fourth uncle of his. Murong Chuyi, for his part, acted as if he hadn't heard or seen a thing, simply turning his gaze upon the sword spirit. Those bright brown eyes swept across Li Qingqian. A good blade, he said, as if the man Li Qingqian didn't exist in his eyes at all, and before him was only Hong Shao the sword. What a pity. With a swish of his whisk, a talisman, the same one that had taken Yue Chunqing unimaginable effort to draw, materialized beneath Li Qingqian's feet. Murong Chuyi enunciated each syllable in a tone devoid of emotion. This sword of water's gleam was once a yearning dream. The sword subsumes thy soul, my bidding lights thy way. Yue Chunqing was long accustomed to being ignored by his fourth uncle. He scurried over and said, undeterred, "That's what I just chanted, it didn't work." Murong Chuyi didn't so much as blink as he continued. "Rest not in this demon blade, return thyself to the earthly world." "It's not holy sword?" Yue Chunqing exclaimed in shock. But anguish was already apparent on Li Qingqian's face. Black mist seeped out of the Hongshao sword in his arms. At once, it congealed, and the blade shattered into thousands of glittering shards. Yue Chunqing had recited the incantation 30 times, but Murong Chuyi only needed to say it once. He finally realized what had happened. Ah, that's right. This sword is from the Liao Kingdom. It's not a holy weapon, but a demonic one. That's why the final line should be... Murong Chuyi glanced sidelong at the fragmented remains of Li Qingqian's sword spirit with his amber eyes. There was a pause, and he suddenly knit those sharp brows. How odd. Sword spirits ought to immediately dissipate after their weapons were destroyed, but Li Qingqian's sword spirit hadn't scattered at all. It was still there. It had merely become faded and incorporeal, and then a cloud of black mist shot upward before he could finish the thought, sweeping past the group and soaring out of the cave. "Fourth uncle, he escaped," Yue Chunqing cried. "I'm not blind. I saw. Let's go after him." Murong Chuyi glanced in the direction the black chi had gone. "We can't catch up." Yue Chunqing was stunned by his fourth uncle's frank honesty. Murong Chuyi lifted a hand and worked a spell, levitating what remained of Hongshao's hilt. Extending 2 fingers, he lowered his gaze and began to examine it thoroughly. What happened? Yue Chunqing launched into a flurry of questions. Why is part of the hilt still here? Shouldn't the entire thing disappear? Why didn't the sword spirit dissipate? Murong Chuyi was still scrutinizing the remaining piece. His obsession was too deep, so he became a sword demon. If the obsession is not resolved, the spirit will not dissipate. "Oh no," Yue Chunqing yelped. "Fourth uncle. He said he wanted to go kill more people, So he'll never disappear unless he kills the person he wants to kill? Are there any other options? Moshi cut in. Yes. Murong Chuyi tossed the last piece of the Hongshao sword into his own white silk Tiankun pouch. Talk him out of this obsession. With that, he turned to leave the cave. But after taking a few steps, he halted again. If you wish to stop him, please come back with me to Yuwu Manor to talk first. Rena, truly insane Chuaning vibes. I absolutely agree. That's what I've been thinking. Wait, I was trying to use a book stand, but it's kind of just... I don't know, maybe I need new glasses because I need the book closer to me to see it better. Okay. Yue Chunqing scurried after him. Fourth uncle, you don't need to be so polite with me. Of course I'll go home with you. Murong Chuyi's white robes fluttered, and the silk ribbon in his hair crown danced. He was the picture of an elegant immortal who trod without touching the dust of the ground. But he didn't even glance at Yue Chunqing, as though he were selectively deaf. Moshi took in the scene in front of him and sighed inwardly. Human relationships were indeed the most unpredictable. Jiang Yeshue was so kind and attentive to his little half-brother. He was warm and lenient, thoughtfully considerate in every possible way. Despite this, Yue Chunqing didn't respect him, let alone like him. But Murong Chuyi, he always treated Yue Chunqing poorly. Toward others, he could be described as aloof, but toward Yue Chunqing, he could be downright cruel. Yet Yue Chunqing stubbornly adored him. He loved to tag along and pursue him to make conversation. This never changed, no matter how many years went by. Moshi couldn't help but think of all the ways Gumong had betrayed him. So numerous that he had given up speaking of them. And yet, he himself couldn't say whether some bygone affection still hid somewhere within his heart. Yuwu Manor was one of the most mysterious residences in Chonghua, and the most secretive areas within this mysterious abode were all Murong Chuyi's territory. Ranked by difficulty of entry, the list would look something like this. Murong Chuyi's courtyard, Murong Chuyi's study, Murong Chuyi's bedroom, Murong Chuyi's artificing workshop. The last was more or less an invulnerable fortress, impenetrable to anyone but the ignorant immortal himself. No one else had taken more than a step inside. This was the origin of a common saying that within Chonghua's borders there were two places that not even His Imperial Majesty could access. The first was Medicine Master Jiang's medicine refinery, and second was Murong Chuyi's artificing workshop. The medicine refinery was guarded by poison, and the artificing workshop boasted safeguarding mechanisms that couldn't be cracked, even if you gave His Imperial Majesty hundreds of years. Murong Chuyi's artificing abilities were unmatched, to the point where not even Yue Juntian himself had ever sounded the depths of his true skill. Which wasn't to say Yue Juntian hadn't tried. Murong Chuyi served him a heaping bowl of refusal every time. Eventually, Yue Juntian could no longer endure the repeated hits to his pride. Thus he always told outsiders with a stiff chuckle, "Chuyi is young after all. It's understandable that he's afraid of swapping pointers with Zongshu, a generation older than him." Murong Chuyi let him say whatever he liked. In any case, he didn't care a whit what others saw or what they thought. His ignorant immortal moniker hadn't come out of nowhere. Murong Chuyi loved nothing except his armor blueprints, and he loved them to the point of madness. As for reputation, friends, or family, if they wanted to leave, he was happy to show them the door. Yue Chunqing's paternal uncle happened to be leaving just as this group reached the manor. His eyesight was poor, so from afar he only noticed Yue Chunqing. He was compelled to raise his voice in rebuke. "Little brat, so disobedient. Where'd you run off to? I was just getting ready to go hunt you down." "Uncle," Yue Chunqing tried to explain, "I accepted His Imperial Majesty's mission." Terminally offline king, aspirational. Yeah, that's so true. "You baby rascal. What mission?" But before he could finish, he caught sight of Murong Chuyi approaching under the frosty moonlight, and his eyes bugged out of his skull. "You?" He had good reason to be shocked. Although Murong Chuyi lived in the Yue Manor, he almost never showed his face. If no one needed to ask him anything, the manor's residents could go months without catching so much as a glimpse of the man. Yet now, he was not only out in public, but also followed by Yue Chunqing and a good handful of others. This was truly too unthinkable. Uncle Yue was dazed for a long moment. What were you doing outside?" Murong Chuyi deigned to reply this time, though not with any courtesy. He coldly retorted, "Was I under house arrest?" Uncle Yue, being a very direct man, immediately felt insulted. "What's with that tone? You're not even a member of the main family." There's a footnote for that. Historically, the main family consisted of those with paternal lineage, while descendants with maternal lineage had lower standing. Because, of course. You're not even a member of the main family. I give you an inch of respect, and you're really taking a mile, aren't you?" "Uncle, don't be angry." Yue Chunqing hurried to mollify him. "If it hadn't been for Fourth Uncle's timely rescue today, that rapist might have killed me." Only then did Uncle Yue snort like a bull, glance at Murong Chuyi's snow-white silhouette, and satisfy himself with a few grumbles. A second or two later, he squinted his cloudy eyes to peer at the figures bringing up the rear of the party. "And these gentlemen are—" "Second brother Yue," Murong Lian sneered. "You'd best spend less time peddling your little mechanisms. If you can't even make out the face of someone a few meters away, you're not far from going blind." At the sound of this voice, Uncle Yue stared. "Wangshu Jun." Murong Lian laughed maliciously. And Shiha Jun, too." Uncle Yue was stunned into silence. Even with his status as a high-ranking noble, he still fell short of the stars in the sky that were Wangshu and Shihe. He hustled down the steps to greet them. Terribly sorry about that. Look at these eyes of mine. They really are almost blind. Please excuse the insufficient welcome." Only as he got closer did he realize that the stalwart bamboo warrior that stood at the back of the group had an unconscious Gumong tied to it. At the sight of public enemy number 1 right before him, and in such a bewildering position, Uncle Yue couldn't help his astonishment. His jaw dropped in shock, and he tilted his head back to look up at the insensible beast of the altar. Murong Lian hooked his pipe around Uncle Yue's neck, snapping the old man out of his daze. "Second brother Yue, don't forget to go see Medicine Master Jiang," he said with a grin. "Treat your ailments before it's too late." Yes. I'll go see Physician Jiang for a Liu Li eyepiece." "Good boy." Murong Lian let him off, laughing. "Oh, right. I have a craving. Could you pop by my manor and fetch me a fresh pipe with some ephemera?" Second brother Yue quickly nodded twice, only to hear Murong Chuyi say blandly, "Open flame is prohibited in my courtyard." Murong Lian looked at him quizzically. "Why?" "It'll blow up." Murong Lian was struck silent for a moment, but his curiosity won out in the end. He could smoke ephemera to his heart's content at home, but the living quarters of this ignorant immortal were closed even to his imperial majesty himself. He repressed the burning itch in his chest and followed Murong Chuyi down long, winding corridors into the deepest recesses of the Yue Manor's northern corner. The group stopped before a tightly shut full moon door of red sandalwood. Murong Chuyi flicked his whisk 4 times at the Qi Xing Beidou star formation embedded within. First at Yu Heng, then Tianshu, then Yao Guang, then finally Tianchuan. There is a footnote. The asterism known as the Big Dipper or Ursa Major in Western astronomy. The named stars are known as Epsilon, Alpha, Eta, and Delta Ursae Majoris, respectively. The 4 spirit stones clicked and slowly sank into the wood, to be replaced by 4 little wooden men. The wooden figures opened their tiny mouths and asked in unison, "Who goes there?" "It's me," Murong Chuyi said simply. An engraved key appeared in the hand of each figurine. "Which will you choose?" Murong Chuyi carelessly grabbed one, and the wooden men disappeared. Yue Chunqing stared with eyes wide as copper bells, murmuring to himself as if trying to memorize something. Murong Lian absent-mindedly spun his pipe in his hand and snorted. There's no point in trying to memorize it. The procedure might not even be the same every time. Isn't that right, ignorant immortal? Murong Chuyi did not dignify his question with a response, choosing instead to insert the key into the lock. There was a muted click, and the sandalwood door rumbled open. "Come in," he said lightly. That's the end of the chapter. Yeah, Henry, I was just thinking about that. Beidou, first at Yu Heng. So I know that in Arha, Chu Waning's name is based on, like, the same star formation that they're talking about here. So I know it has to do with that, but I also don't think that it's a coincidence. But I don't know. This man just seems awfully similar to Chu Waning in certain ways. Okay, we are on page 19 for chapter 36, which is called They Were in Love. One glance at the courtyard, and Moshi understood why Murong Chuyi had said open flame was prohibited lest the whole place blow up. Despite Murong Chuyi's immaculate appearance, the mess in the courtyard was so awful it made one's hair stand on end. The ground was littered with fragments of wood, sulfur, and coal. Hulking suits of armor, half-finished, were strewn about, and no less than a dozen bamboo warriors slumped under the colonnade. The incomparably elegant, ignorant immortal was unconcerned with this scene of disorder. He led everyone to a small pond in the depths of the courtyard. The pool was crystal clear. Rings, white jade hairpins, and various other trinkets lay at the bottom. "What's this?" Yue Chunqing wondered. "The legendary pool of virtuous merit?" Murong Lian's eyes narrowed. "Does your fourth uncle seem like the type to earn virtuous merits?" Yue Chunqing was indignant. He put his hands on his hips. "Why couldn't my 4th uncle earn merits?" "You're seriously too funny. Don't you know what kind of reputation he has?" "My 4th uncle is really ferocious," Yue Chunqing responded furiously. Murong Lian loved nothing more than to tread on people's tails. If Yue Chunqing had held his tongue, it would have ended there. But as soon as he responded, Murong Lian grew all the more invigorated. Even his craving for ephemera had receded a bit. Ferociousness and reputation are two different things, he teased. He pointed to Gumong, still strapped to the bamboo warrior. Is he not ferocious? Didn't stop his reputation from stinking to high heaven. Yue Chunqing's cheeks puffed out in anger. He may have been the best-tempered young master in Chonghua, but his fourth uncle was the one topic he could not let lie. Yue Chunqing had blindly adored his youngest uncle ever since he was little. After sputtering for a long time, he shouted at Murong Lian, "You dare call other people stinky? Murong Daga, you're very stinky yourself." Murong Lian was at a complete loss for words. Miracle of miracles, the sun had risen from the west. Young Master Yue had not only learned how to curse, but the one he cursed out was him? Murong Lian found himself unable to respond for quite a while, stunned silent by shock that outweighed everything else. At that moment, Murong Chuyi turned to face them. This is the dream transfiguring pool. If spiritual items are thrown in, the water will turn gold. And then, Moshi asked, we each take a jade cup and drink a cupful. After that, we'll fall asleep and dream of past events connected to this blade. Murong Chuyi held Hong Shao's hilt between his middle and index fingers. He looked at Moshi, ignoring Wang Shujun and Yue Chunqing, likely because he was sick of their racket. I'll toss it now. The ignorant immortal figured that Moshi disliked wasting breath more than anything, so he only spoke as a gesture of courtesy. He didn't even wait for Moshi's nod before he moved to toss the hilt in. He hadn't expected that Moshi would stop him. Moshi nodded in Gumong's direction. If we sleep, what happens to him? Simple. Murong Chuyi swept his leaves back and said blandly, Xuanwu formation, rise. As his voice rang out, all the plants in the courtyard began to rustle. Every bamboo warrior clambered upright from amid the vegetation. Even those that were slumped on the ground stood up, their joints creaking noisily. One after another, they leapt forward and surrounded Gumong, forming a crowd of 50-odd warriors that continued to grow in number. Even for an immortal, it would be absolutely impossible to spirit him away within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Murong Chuyi said. Murong Chuyi and Moshi both preferred to use words like absolutely, certainly, and definitely. Since Murong Chuyi had said absolutely nothing could take Gumong away, then he must have been completely certain. Moshi glanced at those bamboo warriors. Then let us begin, he said, and turned to face the dream transfiguring pool. Hong Shao slipped into the water, and the pool quickly flashed gold. Murong Chuyi retrieved 3 jade cups shaped like lotus petals, passing one to Murong Lian and one to Moshi. Yue Chunqing stared helplessly. What about me? I don't get one? Murong Lian snickered. Heh, your fourth uncle doesn't like you enough to let you join in on the fun. Yue Chunqing was like a confused puppy. He turned his head and blinked, peeking over at his uncle. His fourth uncle paid him no mind, heaping to himself as he downed his own cup in one draught. The dream transfiguring pool was incredibly potent. As soon as he'd swallowed, his eyes drifted shut and he fell asleep with his head pillowed on his arm. Fourth uncle? When he saw how dejected Yue Chunqing looked, Moshi filled Murong Chuyi's used cup and passed it to Yue Chunqing. The young man hastily took it, finally allowed to join in. With a quick word of thanks, he gulped it down and slumped over, limbs akimbo as he dozed off. Moshi and Muranglian waited no longer to drink their own dream-transfiguring water and instantly sank under. At first, everything was dark, as if they'd been plunged into the blackness of night. Then they heard the sounds of a sword whistling brightly through the air. The cries of that blade were like a mighty thunderstorm that shook the earth and painted over the sky. Moshi could probably recognize the brilliant sound of that sword, even with his eyes shut. These same sounds had rung out when Li Qingqian had battled thousands of demon wolves at his side. At that time, the water-parting sword had not yet reached the peak of its power, but each and every strike had been filled with clear and pure spiritual energy. The scene slowly brightened as they listened to the swings of the sword, and their surroundings gradually became clear. It was late spring, and they were in a little village house, the yard filled with fluttering apricot blossoms. Li Qingqian, who looked to be around 20, was practicing his sword, his patched green robes whirling through the air with every movement. But he wasn't alone. A dainty girl dressed in coarse purple clothes exchanged blows with him. Her movements were clever and swift, spinning and ducking so quickly it was difficult to catch a glimpse of her face. It wasn't until Li Qingqian had her at sword point that she laughingly came to a stop. She complained with mock indignance, "Dage, I held out for another 12 strikes today. Don't I deserve praise?" Li Qingqian smiled. "Hong Shao is very formidable." Hong Shao, it seemed, was this maiden's name, and she wasn't satisfied. "You used that line last time. Try a different one?" Li Qingqian laughed helplessly. "Then, you're the most intelligent?" "You said that the time before last. You need to think harder." With a huff, she turned away. Only then did Moshi get a good look at her features. This girl was around 17 or 18, with skin like lotus petals, slender brows like a willow, and a beauty mark at the outer corner of her eye. Moshi was not great at telling women apart. He simply thought she looked quite familiar. Only after a few seconds did he realize that this girl looked quite like those missing maidens. Or perhaps he should say those missing girls looked like fragments of her. Some had similar noses or lips, while others had that mole by their eye. Li Qingqian sheathed his sword and reached out to flick the girl's forehead. "Can't think of anything. I give up." He turned around to duck back into the house. "Hey, you. You just didn't try hard enough." Hong Shao skipped after him and cried out at the top of her lungs, "Ah, Li Daga has gone back on his word. Li Daga doesn't care about me anymore." The chickens in the courtyard scurried about in fright, and the little dog began to bark. Whether they were trying to cheer her on or drown her out, who could say? Moshi was speechless. He had never truly had any patience for women. Steady types like Mengzi were all right, but little maidens like Hong Shao were easily among his top 10 worst nightmares. Yet it was clear that Li Qingqian liked her very much. There wasn't the slightest hint of impatience when he spoke to her. Rena, I just looked at your comment. Moshi was not great at telling women apart. Yeah, we know. Fruit. So gay that he turns into a hater. Oh, man. Yeah. Okay. Needed a second to recover from that. As Moshi watched, he came to understand the relationship between them. It seemed that Hong Shao had been a young girl escaping famine, and Li Qingqian had picked her up on his travels. When they met, he was merely 18 and she was 15. After 3.5 years of traveling together far and wide, they were now an inseparable pair. Unfortunately, neither Li Qingqian nor Hong Shao had a scrap of romantic experience. Li Qingqian went without saying, and although Hong Shao looked rambunctious, she was a pure girl who never dared voice the feelings hidden in her heart. Thus, although the affection between them was obvious even to strangers, the two of them were clueless on how to broach the topic. Most unbelievably of all, one night, Hong Shao had gotten drunk and leaned forward against the table, staring blankly at Li Qingqian in the glow of the candlelight. As she caught sight of his hand resting by the scroll as he read, she couldn't resist the temptation any longer. She inched quietly closer, bit by bit. Heart pounding, she plucked up all her courage and took hold of his hand. Li Qingqian had turned his wide-eyed gaze on her in astonished silence. Hong Shao's cheeks were ruddy from wine as she giggled, and her eyes were filled with sparkling brilliance. Daga. Logically speaking, in cases where two parties are pining for one another, as long as one of them musters up the courage to speak, to poke through that thin paper window between them, the other should then be able to express themselves and reciprocate their feelings. But as Hong Shao gazed at Li Qingqian's elegant and handsome face, she suddenly felt timid. Was she really fit to be with him? 3 years ago, when this man had reached out a hand to the frozen, starving, filthy little girl covered in scabies, he had already become her big brother, her deity, her knight in shining armor. In the eyes of Hong Shao, everything about her Li Daga was wonderful. His looks, his heart, his cultivation, his voice. Other than being poor, he was the best in the world in every way. She lowered her head to consider herself. Although her looks were pleasant enough, in the end, she was no more than an illiterate girl, both clumsy and stupid. She ate a lot, twice as much as her Li Daga in a single meal, and her voice was too loud, like a raucous drum. The more this little drum thought, the more sorrowful she felt. The courage she had so painstakingly gathered abandoned her at the critical moment. Her bravery was gone, but their hands were still linked. She had to find a suitable excuse, didn't she? She couldn't possibly say, "Sorry, Daga. I grabbed your hand thinking it was a cup of tea." And so, Hong Shao concocted an excuse so terrible it didn't convince even Mo Shi. She laughed and said, "Let's arm wrestle." Li Qingqian had no words. Let's play. Let's see who's stronger." Li Qingqian also thought he'd misread the situation. The tips of his ears were pink as he withdrew his hand from her palm and lowered his lashes. "Didn't we just match wits yesterday?" he said helplessly. "Exactly. So today we'll compete in strength." "What new whim is this?" Li Qingqian chuckled reluctantly. "A new competition every day? Then what kind of match are you planning for tomorrow?" "Tomorrow we'll compete in handsomeness," Hong Shao declared. She grabbed the brush Li Qingqian had left beside his book and drew a mustache on her face with 2 strokes. "Look, Daga, just like this." Li Qingqian watched her look from side to side, cleverly stroking her imaginary beard. He couldn't help but feel amusement and tenderness. He did like her back, but just as she saw herself as too stupid, clumsy, and gluttonous, Li Qingqian considered himself too stuffy and poor. He'd always felt that a girl as clever and pretty as Hong Shao shouldn't have to suffer alongside him. In fact, when Hong Shao had first insisted on sticking with him, he had told her rather helplessly, "Miss, I only saved you because I happened to see you collapsed on the side of the road when you were so ill. I never asked you to repay me in any way." Despite her voice, loud as a drum, Hong Shao's figure was slight. As soon as Li Qingqian quickened his pace, her footsteps pattered as she chased after him, frantically explaining as she ran, "Da gaga, da gaga, I know. You don't need me to repay you, but I want to." "Stay at the healer's hall, then. Didn't I already speak with the doctor? She's willing to take you on as a disciple. If you want to repay me, study with her and learn to cure illnesses and save people in the future." Doesn't that sound nice? No, it doesn't. Hong Shao was so anxious she had begun hopping up and down. "I was ready to sell myself to bury my godfather. But you gave him a burial, saved me, and took me to the doctor. I don't care. I'm staying for sure. Ah!" She was screaming and shouting like a little lunatic by the end. Now that he'd seen how troublesome this sick kitten was once she'd regained her strength, Li Qingqian's head began to ache, and he walked even faster. Hong Shao grew more distressed, her shoddy grass sandals slapping the ground. They were constantly tripping her and hindering her chase, so she kicked them off and threw them at Li Qingqian, one after another. Squatting barefoot on the ground, she sobbed, Don't leave. How about I don't repay you? Would that work?" Li Qingqian was rendered speechless. Tears streamed down her dirty face. "I won't repay you. I'll freeload off you. I'll live off your kindness. Is that good enough? Da gaga, don't leave me by myself." She wiped her tears away as she spoke through her sobs. "If you leave me alone in the healer's hall, I'm so clumsy, I don't know anything. What if the doctor changes her mind after a few days and sells me? I've already been passed through 3 different households. I've been someone's future daughter-in-law, a servant girl, and an adopted daughter. I don't even know what I am anymore." She cried harder and harder, wailing hoarsely at the top of her lungs. Her tears stained the mud, and her grubby feet ground into the dirt. "Don't leave me behind," she wept. "I don't want to go to a 4th household." When he saw her crying like this, what else could he do? Li Qingqian had been born in Lichun, the weakest nation in the 9 provinces. His small country was wedged between 2 overbearing neighbors and often caught in the crossfire. But no great cultivators would come when demons or monsters attacked. He had watched with his own eyes as his mother was raped and murdered, and his father stabbed to death. He hadn't even been 10 years old. He'd huddled, shivering, inside a closet in their family's dilapidated shack, and clutched his barely weaned brother. His tears had flowed uncontrollably, but he still kept his hand clamped tight over his little brother's mouth, muffling his cries. But those cultivators possessed strong spiritual energy. How could they fail to notice 2 children hiding in the house? They had kicked down the closet door. Amid the flying wood shards, 2 coarse hands had lifted him and his brother out. Li Qingqian clung tightly to his baby brother, unwilling to let go. The cultivators responded with a storm of nasty laughter, and vicious blows and curses rained down upon their small bodies. Could we bring these 2 whelps back and use them to make medicine? Doesn't look... Okay, sorry. Doesn't look like they've inherited their mother's butterfly-boned beauty feast blood. Their tears aren't the right color. Just kill them then. Might as well nip any future trouble in the bud. At the time, Li Qingqian hadn't understood a word of what they said. He didn't know what a butterfly-boned beauty feast was. He only watched as several cultivators wrapped his mother's naked body in satin and took her who knows where. He wailed and screamed, wanting to run after his dear mother's corpse, but he couldn't put down the little brother in his arms. Coppery blood, burning smoke, and the fiendish laughter of the cultivators blurred into one mess in his eyes. Suddenly, he heard a great boom. A jade-colored sword glare had flashed out and decapitated those cultivators, their blood spurting high into the air. Moments later, a green-clothed man in a golden mask appeared at the door. With the daylight at his back, he stepped over their corpses to enter Li Qingqian's home. Okay, that's the end of that chapter. Yeah, we've got green guys. I think my guess is that Li Qingqian, like, emulated the guy who was clothed in green. But we're gonna find out more about him. Yeah, every time, like, I know this is in the same world as Arha, but every time something comes up and I'm, like, reminded of that, I'm just like, whoa, hold on, what was that? So, thanks, Meat Bun, for that. Okay, I guess I'm gonna do chapter 37, and then we'll take a break. Chapter 37, Why Did Fate Have to Come Between Them? Li Qingqian only remembered the man's upturned and narrow almond eyes, which looked as though they were veiled behind a river's worth of mist. The man's gaze had swept around the shabby little shack, making sure there weren't any survivors, before landing on Li Qingqian and his brother. Li Qingqian stared blankly at this cultivator in green, while his baby brother sobbed in his arms, sick with fever. Even as young as he was, the child seemed to realize they had suffered a catastrophic loss, that he'd lost the papa who wove him bamboo dragonflies, and the mama who liked to tweak his nose. The cultivator in green looked at them for a time. He walked over and lowered his gaze behind that golden mask. After a moment, he produced a bottle of medicine, along with some loose silver. This medicine can heal most common illnesses, he said. Keep it for your brother. Without another word, he turned to leave. Li Qingqian remained frozen for a long time before abruptly returning to his senses. He grabbed the medicine and the silver, and rushed outside to find that the village was littered with black-clothed corpses. The man in green seemed to be making sure no evildoers had escaped. "Dagaga!" Li Qingqian cried out, falling to his knees before his mysterious savior. The green-robed man turned to take a look at him from behind the mask. "Dagaga, please take us with you." The man said nothing. Li Qingqian's eyes were bloodshot. "We've always been running, but Mama and Papa were still. He was crying so hard he could scarcely speak. "Dagaga, please." In the end, however, that green-clothed man didn't take them. Instead, he gave Li Qingqian a sword cultivation manual. He said that the style was too weak for him to make much use of, but as long as Li Qingqian diligently worked at it, he could perhaps use this manual to forge his own sword path, which would be sufficient for self-defense. Now, as Li Qingqian watched Hongxiao crying in the dirt, pleading for him to keep her, he seemed to see himself from long ago, could feel the same helplessness and despair. Finally, he sighed and walked over to Hongxiao. "Get up." Hongxiao was startled to see him turn and come back. She gazed at him with teary eyes, sobs hitching in her throat. "But remember, I'm only taking you along for now. If we pass by anywhere nice, anywhere you can stay, then I won't keep you with me." Hongxiao couldn't care less. She wiped at her little face and smiled through her tears, words of agreement pouring from her mouth. She had seen her fair share of humanity, and she knew that Li Qingqian had a kind heart. If he didn't abandon her now, then he was even less likely to in the future. She nodded energetically, head bobbing like a chicken pecking at rice. "Whatever Dagaga says." As if. That first day, she was yet obedient. But by day 3, she was jumping about, climbing trees, and rolling on the ground. By year 3, she was long out of control. Whatever Li Qingqian did, she did as well. And unlike what she had promised, her appetite was plenty large, and she ate a lot. Every time Li Qingqian noticed their rice jar was empty, he'd turn to look at Hongxiao chasing the dog around in the yard. He'd sigh fondly and shake his head. Fortunately, a kindly old scholar had accepted his little brother as a disciple many years ago. If they'd had one more mouth to feed, Li Qingqian would have really been in trouble. Hongxiao had once asked him, "Dagaga, you're so strong. Why don't you ask for a higher fee after killing demons?" "Because those people are poor too," Li Qingqian responded. "But you could go kill demons for rich people." At that time, Li Qingqian hadn't fully developed the water-parting sword, and could only poorly copy what was in the green-clothed cultivator's manual. Laughing, he said, "First of all, I'm not strong enough. Second, there's this many people." He spread his hands wide apart for Hongxiao, willing to work for the rich. But hardly a one of them are willing to help people in small countries like Lichun. "I see." Hongxiao munched on a steamed bun, nodding. "You're a good person." "My savior from back then was a good person as well," Li Qingqian said, smiling bashfully. "I never learned who he was, but I've always wanted to become a cultivator like that. But I definitely won't be as strong as him, and I will probably always be this poor." Hongxiao wasn't happy with this. Mouthful of steamed bun, she sketched a large circle with her hands. "No, Daga is the strongest. Daga is this. She strained to pull her arms into an even bigger circle. "This strong." Li Qingqian laughed out loud and patted her on the head. "If you keep talking, you'll drop that steamed bun." Oh, and there's art. Oh, we're going to look at the art. They're just being cute. I'm upset because they're being cute is going to be cut short. Anyway. Hongxiao yelled and bit down, grinning as she chomped on the steamed bun and kicked her feet. Her goose yellow embroidered shoes were beautiful and very clean. Li Qingqian had purchased them with the pitiful few cowrie shells he had. She was very careful when she wore them, and though they might have been old after so many years, They were very rarely dirty. Li Qingqian and Hong Shao traveled together like this, doing good deeds as they wished and cultivating the path of the sword together. The vision flowed onward, and now Hong Shao was sitting in a tree, wildly shaking it for fruit. Li Qingqian stood beneath, and though his head ached, he nevertheless looked up at her with overwhelming tenderness. But this kind of calm and peaceful life couldn't last. Moshi already knew what kind of ending awaited them. Looking at their brilliant smiles was akin to gazing at a beautiful mirage. This girl would leave Li Qingqian. He would become famous. Then he would die. In the end, he would be forged into a vicious sword spirit. How had all this come to pass? The vision shifted and changed, and each layer of the mystery began to gradually erode, revealing the bare truth beneath the sands of time. On a day near the end of spring, they came to the turning point. Hong Shao fell sick. The two of them had recently passed by a little village near the Liao Kingdom. The Liao Kingdom's territories were ever suffused with demonic energy, which thickened as spring turned to summer. Hong Shao was accidentally infected with the demonic miasma, and she became seriously ill and bedridden, quickly growing thin and pallid. Li Qingqian sought doctors far and wide, but the medicine to treat this kind of ailment was expensive. Even average citizens couldn't afford it. To say nothing of the penniless Li Qingqian. Again and again, doctors refused to see him. "If you want medicine, let's see the money first," the healers all huffed. "We see patients like this every day. If we so freely gave out treatment, how would there be enough herbs?" Although those healers' attitudes were nasty, Moshi knew they weren't wrong. The medicine for treating this kind of miasma was permanently in short supply, and each country had its own methods of restricting its use. For example, only nobles could purchase it in Changhua, which was why Gumong had once leveraged Murong Lian's name to procure medicine for that village. The Liao Kingdom was slightly more lax. They didn't care about bloodlines. They only cared about money. But Li Qingqian had none. He sat beside Hong Shao's sickbed. She looked like a wilted flower. Gone was the energy for jumping and shouting. She could only squint at him through red, swollen eyes, her lips moving slightly. "What was that?" Li Qingqian whispered. Hong Shao's mouth moved again. Li Qingqian had to lean in very close to hear what she was saying with a smile on her face. "Heh, I don't eat much anymore. I can save Li Dage some money." That day, after Hong Shao fell asleep, Li Qingqian stepped out of the little thatched hut and crouched on the steps, staring off into space. He was suddenly unable to bear it. He curled up and began to cry. He was afraid to weep too loudly. Firstly, because it would be unbecoming for a grown man, and secondly, because he didn't want to wake Hong Shao, who had just fallen into a restless sleep. What should he do? What was he supposed to do? He really wasn't as strong as Hong Shao believed. He really hadn't become the green-robed cultivator from his childhood. He couldn't even protect the little girl who accompanied him. After so many years, other than ambition and empty words, he had nothing. Moshi could hardly stand to watch anymore. But the story had already been told. He knew their fates could no longer be changed. The vision continued to move along. The young Li Qingqian wandered through the busiest markets in the Liao Kingdom, blank-eyed and helpless. He'd sold off what little he could for 7 doses of medicine in order to buy some more time for Hong Shao. Now, only 1 dose was left. What would they do tomorrow? Come, come. Look carefully. The requirements are very strict. Don't try to cheat. From a corner of the market came the pounding of drums. Hong Shao loved this kind of lively atmosphere, and she'd always drag Li Qingqian over to take a peek around whenever they chanced upon such things. He walked over out of absent-minded habit, as though Hong Shao was still at his side, chattering and pulling up on his sleeve as she bounced up and down, complaining that she couldn't see over the crowd. He stood and stared blankly for a moment. He came to his senses and was about to leave when he heard shouts rising from the crowd. Are they really offering that much money? The guosha is seriously too bold. Good heavens, it sure makes me envious. To Li Qingqian, the word money used to be nothing more than a gust of wind, but now the sound of it was like the prick of a needle. He whipped around and glanced over with bright eyes. On the stage, an elite Liao Kingdom cultivator paced back and forth, striking a drum to attract attention. Behind him hung a silk portrait as tall as 3 men. Its subject was a beautiful and alluring woman with a mole at the corner of her eye. From this angle, she unexpectedly looked quite like Hong Shao. Li Qingqian was taken aback. He heard the Liao Kingdom cultivator shouting over and over, "The guosha has read the will of the stars. All girls who look like this will bring prosperity to the kingdom. All who conform to these requirements will be accepted in the palace." He banged on the drum and raised his voice again. "The chosen girls will become priestesses in the palace, and their families will receive 1,000 gold cowries. We're taking volunteers only. Those who are interested, please come to the back of the stage to be examined." Li Qingqian stared into space for a while before coming to a sudden realization. He rushed backstage to the Liao Kingdom cultivators overseeing the examination. His voice shook as he asked, "Will the guosha take any girl who looks like this?" "As long as she looks similar enough." "What is he taking them for?" "Are you deaf?" the cultivator said impatiently. "He's taking them as priestesses. They'll have the good fortune to learn divination and astrology from the guosha himself. We've said it loud and clear. What's so hard to understand?" Li Qingqian's palms were clammy with sweat. He swallowed hard and his eyes widened in both pain and hope. Ignoring the man's nasty attitude, he pressed on. So if the girl has demonic miasma, you are willing to... Didn't I say that we'll take any girl with the right features? Demonic miasma. So what? Won't she be fine with a bit of medicine? What kind of dog fart question is this? If you have someone who looks like this, then bring her to show us. If she doesn't look like the picture, then get lost. Priestesses have to meet high standards. Useless beggar, the cultivator spat. Wasting my time. Li Qingqian remained in shock. Yes, what kind of question was this? Demonic miasma wasn't some incurable disease. It was just as the cultivator said. The afflicted only needed a bit of spiritual medicine. A few doses of medicine were nothing to the guosha, but they were far beyond Li Qingqian's means, even if he dug out his heart and cut open his liver. The man was right. He was no more than a useless fool who couldn't even save the girl he loved. A penniless beggar. Hong Shao should have never gone with him. It was he who made her suffer. Li Qingqian trudged back to the little cottage, his mind somehow racing yet empty at the same time. A stall owner was hawking his wares by the side of the street. Jade and pearl hairpins, forehead ornaments and inlaid necklaces, rouge and powder and more. Come take a look. Li Qingqian slowed to a stop before the stall. He wanted to take a closer look, but given how empty his pockets were, he didn't dare step forward. The seller noticed him and smiled. Little brother, looking for something for your sweetheart? The word sweetheart felt like a needle mercilessly stabbing into his soul. Half dazed, Li Qingqian was dragged over by the enthusiastic stall-keeper. Look, the best gold and jade hairpins from Suyab, impossibly clear. I don't have that much money. Not much money? The shopkeeper was shocked for a moment. He pursed his lips before continuing to smile. No problem, no problem. Let's look for something more affordable. This rouge has an exquisite texture and scent, and the technique is a family secret passed down by my great-grandmother. The price is very reasonable. Only 20 white shells. Li Qingqian's money pouch only held 3 white cowrie shells. Seeing how embarrassed he looked, the shopkeeper stopped chattering and looked him up and down. Noticing the patches on his clothes, the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Still, he casually produced a humble little fabric flower, shoddy in both material and make, and carelessly tossed it in front of Li Qingqian. Then how about this? 5 white cowries. He raised his beady eyes to look at him. Keep the little miss happy. You can't possibly be this stingy. Li Qingqian, thoroughly humiliated, lowered his head silently and turned to leave. The shopkeeper was shocked. He'd wasted so much breath, and this person wasn't even willing to spend 5 white cowries. His temper flared, and he yelled at Li Qingqian's retreating back, ignoring all the eyes around him. For fuck's sake, are you kidding me? You want to pick up women without spending a single cent? You think you're that much of a catch? If you don't have money, then don't wander around out here, getting in the way of this old man's business. Pah! Li Qingqian's face burned like it had been scorched by fire. He forged ahead amid astonished stares and scurried away with his head bowed. He soon left the city and the onlookers behind, but his neck still felt like it had been broken, as though he'd never again have the strength to lift it. He stumbled all the way to the roadside pavilion on the outskirts of the city and sat down, burying his face in his hands. He sat without moving for many hours. By the time he returned to the thatched hut, it was already dusk. Hong Xiao was lying on her side in her sickbed, facing the door. Her slumber was fitful, her cheeks flushed with fever. As soon as she heard Li Qingqian return, her round, kittenish eyes flew open to gaze at him. She mustered her strength and called as loud as she could, "Daga." Okay. That's the end of the chapter. It's 4:09, so I guess we're gonna take like a 10-minute break. And when we come back, we're gonna come back to chapter 38. Mountain Sacrifices. And yeah. That was certainly a feel-good chapter, wasn't it? So we're just gonna have our little break and stew on that, I guess. I will see y'all in 10. How dare Meatbud make me cry for a straight couple. Yeah, that is an ominous title. Yeah. Alright, I will see y'all in a jiffy. Hello. I am back. I don't know if I will be ready for this chapter. I don't think I'll ever be ready for it, but I guess we're gonna get into it. Chapter 38, Mountain Sacrifices. Li Qingqian came in with the cold. In his hands was a red peony he had picked at the side of the road. When Hong Xiao saw the flower that was her namesake, her eyes lit up. "Ah, it's so pretty," she said with a smile. "Is it for me?" Li Qingqian nodded, too afraid to look at her. Hong Xiao was delighted. Not even her illness was enough to tame her unruly personality. She struggled into a sitting position on the bed and took the flower, sniffing it with a grin. "Too bad my hair is so messy. Otherwise, I'd pin it on right away." A pause. "I'll help you brush it out." Before, she had often cajoled Li Qingqian into braiding her hair, so she didn't so much as blink at this offer. She sat on the bed as Li Qingqian let down her long hair, combed and styled it into her customary double buns, and carefully pinned the splendid crimson peony into her inky locks. Hong Xiao touched the flower's petals, smiling as she coughed. "Daga," she cried. "Bring me the mirror. I want to see if it looks good." "Why don't you come off the bed?" Li Qingqian said after a second. "Go look by the table." As he spoke, he moved her only pair of embroidered shoes to the foot of the bed. Throughout all of this, he had not met her eyes once. Only now did Hong Xiao sense that something was amiss. She slowly turned her head to look at Li Qingqian. Hong Xiao was such a noisy little drum, but in this moment her voice was so soft she seemed like a timid kitten. She looked at him inquiringly. "Daga." Li Qingqian said nothing. "Daga, is there something on your mind?" With his hands balled into fists and sweat gathering in his palms, Li Qingqian told her about the Guoshi seeking priestesses. He kept his head bent low as he spoke. As long as he couldn't see the expression on Hong Xiao's face, he could avoid compounding his own sadness and guilt. Yet although he never looked at Hong Xiao's face, how could he not see her tears fall down and soak into the threadbare blanket? I... The little drum's voice was as soft as a kitten's. "I don't want to go." Hong Xiao whimpered, then burst into tears. "I don't want to go. I don't. I've been sold back and forth since birth, Daga, and now even you don't want me anymore? You want to abandon me too? You want to hand me off for the 4th time?" She hugged her knees, crying piteously. Even dogs and cats couldn't bear to change owners 4 times. "But I'm human. Maybe I'm clumsy. Maybe I'm stupid. But I have feelings too. I feel sadness too. I couldn't stand to be parted from you. I don't want to go. I don't want to leave. Just let me die of sickness. I only want to spend each day with Daga." She refused to listen to anything Li Qingqian said. But really, how could Li Qingqian possibly let her die before his eyes like this? Hardening his heart, he stood and turned to her. "If you go to the Guoshi," he said, "your sickness will be cured, and I will receive 1,000 gold cowries. Your life will be saved, and I'll have money. It's a good deal for both of us. Please, do this for me." Stunned, Hong Xiao swallowed her tears and looked at him blankly. Li Qingqian swept back his sleeves. "Go." Hong Xiao was bewildered, but she still managed to say, You wouldn't." "Why wouldn't I?" Li Qingqian turned sharply, the rims of his eyes red, and spoke through gritted teeth. Consider this a plea. I'm already tired enough as it is after caring for you for 3 years. If I sold you, at least I'd be able to eat well. Why are you clinging to me? If you stay with me like this forever, how do you think we'll end up? Hong Xiao's eyes were wide, her gaunt cheeks gradually losing their color. How would we end up? Would they kneel to the heavens and earth to get married? Or would they become two sword cultivators wandering the world together? There was nothing more drawn out and difficult than one person promising themselves to another and spending a lifetime together. A bouquet of passion and two true hearts weren't enough. They needed money, trust, opportunity, and hope, all of which these two lacked. It was one thing to spend 3 years roaming the land together, but what excuse did he have to make her suffer a lifetime of poverty at his side? The stall-keeper was right. He couldn't afford to give her even the ugliest and shabbiest silk flower. Their feelings were no different from the peony blossom in her hair. So beautiful when first plucked, with the promise of being just as splendid tomorrow. But it would die. Together, the two of them could never possess an everlasting silk flower. They could only have a dirt-grown peony, fleetingly beautiful, but withering to nothing in the next breath. In this world, there were many lovers who were defeated by money, status, health, or even love itself. Li Qingqian didn't know which of these struggles had defeated him. To put it gently, he had lost to poverty. To put it harshly, he loved her and refused to see her wither at his side. Thus he had lost to love. Either way, he was someone who had failed utterly. He had no choice but to send her away. A poor wretch with a poor woman, doomed to become a poor geezer dragging around a poor old hag. Do you think I want to live like that? Have you ever taken a moment to think about me? Hong Xiao stared at him in shock. This was the first time since they met that Li Qingqian had spoken to her in anger. She raised her head, the peony tilting, and her face was stained with tears. But I do, she thought. I've never dared to be greedy. I've never even dreamed of riches. The best end I can imagine is for us to be two old peddlers, walking together through the long shadows of sunset. The old hag would make a racket, while the old geezer beside her smiled good-naturedly. Other than their heads of white hair and their wrinkled faces, they would be just as they were in their youth. As it turned out, an ending like this was entirely too rosy for her. It was too much to ask, and was, in fact, absolutely out of her reach. She was just a little slave, selling herself to bury her adoptive father. 3 years ago, Li Qingqian had fulfilled her wish, so he'd essentially bought her. What say did she have in the matter if he now wanted to sell her off? Hong Xiao wasn't a girl. Because she was low-born, Hong Xiao was destined to lead a drifting, aimless life, to be no more than the plaything of others. She had been a child bride, a servant girl in a large household, and a farming family's purchased daughter. She had thought she could call Li Qingqian Dage for a lifetime and settle down at long last. But it was fleeting, just like the others. Once again, she had nothing to rely on. In the end, she went to the Guoshe. At twilight, beneath the luminous clouds, Hong Xiao followed the attending official onto the stage. Step by step, she climbed to the very top of those interminably long stairs to greet her fifth owner. The bells hanging from the eaves of the roof tinkled brightly. She turned at the corner of the stage to glance at the base of the city gate tower. Li Qingqian was receiving heavy bags of gold cowries. After he thanked the attendant, he slowly walked away. She watched his retreating form, thinking, "Why don't you turn? Can't you give me a proper goodbye? Can't you at least wave at me and allow me to willingly part from this 3-year-long daydream?" But then she thought, never mind, never mind. Such was the bitter pain and attachment lodged in her throat that she was afraid she might collapse if he looked at her. She was afraid that she'd panic just as she had all those years ago, sobbing with no regard for anything else, inconsiderately clinging to him and begging him to keep her. The wind picked up, ruffling the flourishing petals of the fragrant peony at her temple and setting her clothes fluttering. Her eyes swam with tears, yet she couldn't help but smile. 1,000 gold cowries could buy so many steamed buns. Surely Dago would never go hungry again. It was fine if he didn't turn around and didn't change his mind. 3 years ago, she had only wanted to survive, which was why she had yelled so recklessly at him while he was leaving. But she was afraid now. Afraid that her cries wouldn't have the power to stop him. That would hurt so much, she'd never be able to take another step forward. She had to keep going. She had to. Her tears still hadn't fallen. She tore her gaze away and walked with lowered head, through the corridor hung with silks and chiming bells, continuing onward. On her feet were her embroidered shoes, and in her hair that red peony. They were so poor that these paltry sentiments were all that remained of those 3 years together. The indistinct sounds of music and singing came from behind the curtains on the noble's stage. The jackdaw mourns at dusk, yet soft are the lakeside willow's leaves. He who knows not parting's pain would never believe in white-haired grief. The golden glow of twilight illuminated the roof and bathed the stage in splendor. Hong Shao carried with her this final piece of yearning. With each step, she walked further into the distance. In searing pain, with endless tears, once more I climb the red tower with a heavy heart, to lean against the railing and watch the horizon, despite the mountains keeping us apart. There's a footnote for that, and I think that also explains the chapter title. The poem To the Tune of Partridge Sky, The Jackdaw Mourns at Dusk, by Southern Song Dynasty poet Shin Chi-ji. The blood-red sun swallowed her shadow, and her surroundings sank below the horizon like the last light of day. A long farewell. From then on, Li Qingqian was all alone in the world. He never again kept anyone by his side. He gave away almost all of those gold cowries to those less fortunate, while hardly spending a single one himself. Many years later, while watching the peonies and flowering brambles in the courtyard, he finally mastered his water-parting sword technique. The sword swung with a cry that was low and mournful, yet also like the ringing of a gong. Amid whipping winds and crackling lightning, he parted water and split the skies. All these scenes from the past winked into darkness before Moshi's eyes, like the end of a long night of fireworks. Like a swiftly spinning paper lantern, the vision finally stopped on a silent, desolate mountain, littered with white bones. Here was the famous battle of Maiden's Lament Mountain. The moment Moshi had seen Hong Shao walk toward the city gate tower to become a priestess of the Liao kingdom, he'd felt uneasy. Moshi wasn't as naive as Li Qingqian. He was all too familiar with those Liao kingdom lunatics, especially their mysterious masked Guoshi, who was crazier than a mad dog. Learning astrology and offering prayers for the nation's prosperity. Even if others believed it, Moshi did not. The Liao kingdom ate human flesh and drank human blood. They were utterly deranged. The fact that Hong Shao had gone there did not bode well. He remembered a rumor about Maiden's Lament Mountain. It was said the Liao kingdom had captured a few hundred girls, dressed them up as brides, and sacrificed them to a mountain god. Linking these two stories, Moshi could more or less guess what had happened. And his guesses regarding the Liao kingdom were usually correct. Li Qingqian had suppressed droves of the teeming, vengeful ghosts on Maiden's Lament Mountain, but since his heart was kind, he refused to let anyone harm the souls of those girls after he'd obtained them. He entrusted his manual for the water-parting sword to his younger brother for safekeeping, and retreated to a remote island with those hundreds of souls, wishing to help them find peace. Each vengeful ghost had to be sent off individually. Li Qingqian let them release their malicious energy one by one, so their souls could return to the cycle of reincarnation. He watched each soul he sent off depart and soar out over the vast sea. The dead maidens all wore stained red robes. While they yet possessed malicious energy, they had no awareness. But once that energy dissipated, they lost all memories of their life. Every day, he watched one dead soul come bitterly and depart blankly. Just like that, day in and day out. The more souls Li Qingqian released, the more frightened he grew. He noticed that every one of these maidens looked very much like someone he knew. They looked like the girl who had chased after him, the girl he left behind at the city gate tower. Before their resentment dissipated, each ghost would mindlessly repeat their last words in life. Li Qingqian heard many different things. Some screamed in pain, some called for their parents, and some mumbled, "Don't bury me. Don't lie to me. I don't want to die. Don't bury me. Don't lie to me. I don't want to die. I don't want to die." These words and the ghost's likenesses all stoked the fire of unease in Li Qingqian's heart. Where had the Liao kingdom gotten these women? Why did they all look so alike? There was an answer at the fringes of his consciousness, but he was too afraid to believe it, too afraid to think it. The number of resentful ghosts in the soul lamp shrank with each passing day. Moshi noticed that Li Qingqian's hands shook with every spirit he let out. Only when he had ascertained the ghost wasn't Hong Shao did they fall still. As if grasping onto a lifeline, he would heave a sigh of relief. Until he released the final ghost. That day, Li Qingqian carried the soul lamp out in the early morning as usual. Moshi noticed his gait was much more relaxed than before. Only one ghost remained from Maiden's Lament Mountain, and Li Qingqian thought his previous fears must have been unfounded after all. His Hong Shao was probably fine, busy reading the stars and learning to be a good priestess in the Guoshi's palace. The fate that his wild imagination had conjured up certainly hadn't befallen her. One last ghost, like a lonely wisp of smoke, drifted out of the lamp and coalesced. The ghost's figure was slight, clad in the scarlet robes and phoenix crown of wedding regalia. She was... Li Qingqian felt as though he'd been struck by lightning, and his blood ran cold. "Hong Xiao," he blurted. The faint image was like a nightmare come to life. Hong Xiao's resentful spirit hovered blankly in front of him, looking just like the girl who had appeared countless times in his dreams. There was even a peony at her temple, and she still wore her goose-yellow embroidered slippers, but she couldn't laugh or jump around. She couldn't squabble with him like a little drum. She was just like all the other ghosts he had exorcised. Her mind and memories had already been obliterated, leaving only a lonely soul to float before him. Even the most naive and stupid person would have realized by now that the Guoshe had deceived everyone. The maidens entrusted to him never became priestesses. They were offered up to the mountain god, their corpses piled high and buried deep. The noble's trickery had deceived all those desperate souls. Hong Xiao floated in mid-air and muttered her final words. With vacant eyes, she said over and over, "Turn around, Daga. I want to say a proper goodbye." "Turn around, please. I don't expect to grow old with you. I don't expect you to give me your hand again, to take me on your journeys or teach me the sword. I was just thinking that, all along, I've always been the one chasing you, the one looking at you from behind. When we say goodbye, could you be the one to watch me go up the tower, to finally take a good look at me? I don't want to die like this, Daga. I never got the chance to say goodbye." Moshi couldn't see Li Qingqian's face from where he stood. All was silent. He made not a single sound. But after a long while, as though a flood had finally broken through the dam, a violent, animalistic howling burst from Li Qingqian's throat. Hoarse, wordless sobs and screams reverberated through the vision. Each cry sounded like it was gouged from his throat with bloody claws. "I shouldn't have sent you away," he cried. "I shouldn't have. If I hadn't sent you away, I wouldn't have been able to make you well, but I could have kept you company. The one to suffer would have been me, but I was selfish and weak. I pushed you onto others, made my escape, and left all of the suffering to you." He knelt before Hong Xiao's dead soul, just as Hong Xiao had knelt in the dirt back when they first met, shaking with grief as he sobbed. "I didn't even have the courage to say goodbye. I never told you honestly that I didn't want to see you go." For an entire day, from the break of dawn to the brilliant sunset, the man and the ghost kept each other company one last time. But the sky finally grew dark, and resentful spirits who had exited the soul lantern could no longer linger. Hong Xiao either had to be sent off or fall into eternal suffering. Li Qingqian had no choice but to muster up his energy. Tears streamed down his face as he began to hoarsely recite the rebirth mantra. He was sending her off, letting her pass on. This time, against the backdrop of the changeable sea and the quiet cadence of Sanskrit, he was the one to watch her go. Namo Amitabhaya Tathagataya, again and again. Tadyatha Mortad Bhave. Hong Xiao, caught in the murmuring of the rebirth mantra, unwittingly began to repeat her last words. "Turn around, Daga. I want to say a proper goodbye." The black chi vanished without a trace. through the rosy clouds at the horizon, 1,000 golden beams streamed into the waves. Li Qingqian's lips trembled as he uttered the last word and slowly raised his head. Hong Xiao's soul was free, her eyes now truly empty. She was silent, as though perplexed to find herself on this vast earth. Then she turned her face toward the horizon, toward the sliver of twilight at the edge of the sea. Without the slightest reluctance, she drifted away. To you, I want to say a proper goodbye. Li Qingqian broke down into sobs. Tracking her retreating figure, he chased after her, hoarsely calling her name, wading into the sea. The water came up to his thighs, then his waist, as the waves battered him. He staggered and fell to his knees, but he did not lower his head. He watched her disappear into the golden glow between the heavens and earth. When we said goodbye at the tower, I didn't look back. This time, it's my turn to look at you. My turn to send you off. In this life, we'll never have the chance to say a proper goodbye. But I'll send you off. I'll help you cross. I'll watch you embark on this long journey. Hong Xiao, Hong Xiao. Will you forgive me like this? Forgive my deficiency and weakness? Did you ever forgive me? Could you ever forgive me? The skies were empty, the sun a blood-red sickle on the edge of the world. Twilight deepened as the sea swallowed that final scrap of light. Darkness engulfed the solitary island, and night rushed to cover the sea amid his tortured sobs. Moshi didn't move, nor did he look at Li Qingqian's face. He had spent half of his life on military duty in places ravaged by poverty, and he had seen that kind of broken, ruined visage countless times. He had no wish to witness such a sight again now. Not long after, Li Qingqian traveled back to the Liao Kingdom. He sought an explanation from the Guoshi. What kind of priestesses are used to fill the soil of mountains and placate the gods? Those are called sacrifices. Sacrifices. Li Qingqian has already cultivated his water-parting sword to its peak. With a chest brimming with hatred and a belly full of vengeance, the Liao Kingdom's guards were no match for him. He swiftly flew across roof tiles and peaks to land before Guoshi Hall. With 3 blows, he slaughtered the guards, then kicked in the door. Well, that is the end of that chapter. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess that they did see brides as offerings. Obviously it's really fucked up. I don't know if they might have thought of it, like, when they're offering them up as sacrifices. They're like... This is so, like, this is just, like, my thought in my head of, like, trying to figure out why they would do that. But if they were like, oh, they're getting married to the mountain god or the god that they're sacrificing them to, obviously seeing marriage in the most fucked up, possessive way possible. That was a lot. Henry said, "This is Meat Bun reminding us not to complain about the angst the main couples face because it could be so much worse." And yeah, I kind of, yeah, I see that. Blue, aren't we glad Meat Bun made us read this? Oh yeah. Absolutely thrilled. Okay, well, we're on page 53 for chapter 39, which is called Guasha. Oh, hold on. This is like a... kind of a long chapter. Yeah, so maybe we should just stop here for today. Unfortunately, because, like, I feel like there's not going to be a good stopping point today. Even if I do read this chapter, I'm sure it also ends in some sort of tragedy. Or just something sad, so I don't know. But I guess we're gonna have to stop here today. Well, that was the first stream of Volume 2. Hopefully it gets more fun from here. But to be fair, I do remember the first volume... Excuse me. I remember the first volume starting out, like, very, very dark and very depressing, and it slowly got less depressing overall. So maybe this one is going to be the same way. Maybe that's how all these Remnants of Filth volumes are split up. Like, the beginning of each one is just super angsty, and then it kind of levels off. So we're just gonna hope that it levels off. Hopefully soon. Hopefully a little bit, you know, next time. Yeah. So then... I mean, look, it's Meat Bun, so it's beautifully written. So I can't say that I didn't enjoy any of it. But that one was a doozy. But, I guess I will see y'all on Monday. That will be the 28th, I think. So Monday, the 28th, at 3 o'clock, I'll see y'all, and we will continue Volume 2. Super looking forward to it. But anyway, I do something comforting and nice, and I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.